Welcome to Booksolve and to 100 Great Reads. Now, so far, the books that I've chosen for a 100 Great Reads series are novels that I've read a fair few years back, and that's to be expected. I mean, next June I'll be setting out to sail into my 7th decade of existence. Anyway, book 12, however, is one that I read last year, and one that I believe strongly should have been the judge's pick for the Booker Prize in 2023. The actual winner, The Prophet Song by Paul Lynch, was a timely and resonant novel. It delivered an important message about refugees and about the fragility of liberal democracy. But literary, I thought it rather conventional and dull in its style and delivery. Far less conventional, more ambitious, more evocative, and more challenging was Sarah Bernstein's Sarah Bernstein's Study for Obedience, and I really enjoyed this novel. The striking issue that I found with Study for Obedience was the setting and the overall theme. I formed the assumption that it was set in Norway and that the novel was an exploration of the Jewish experience of diaspora after World War II. But in reality, Bernstein leaves the setting ambiguous and makes no explicit reference to Jews. And I know some reviewers have taken it to be set somewhere else, so I don't know. In this way, she affects, I think, a more nuanced and atmospheric exploration of isolation and alienation. The narrator of the novel, who remains unnamed, has agreed to relocate to a house in the woods of a northern country to care for her ailing brother after his wife has left him. Or died. Can't remember which. Anyway. That really sounds like a setup for a horror story, and it's true that Study for Obedience does sustain that unsettling, no help at hand vibe that leaves you holds you in suspense and always expecting some jump scare or some sudden grisly outbreak of violence. The narrator's early childhood as the youngest of many siblings has accustomed her to the servile role of obeying, though she has acquired skills of appeasement and mediation. The brother immediately leaves on a business trip, and she's left alone in the house, and she finds the woods alluring, but rather intimidating. And when she goes into the village, she finds that the villagers seem to fear her, averting their children's eyes, crossing themselves when they see her, and being cold and terse when she does her shopping, crossing the street so that they can avoid meeting her. And there's a number of strange events occurring with local animals, and these only intensify the villagers' distrust of her. And she makes an unfortunate choice, I think, of crafting dolls as presents and leaving them on the doorsteps of houses where they've got children. That's really not going to work, is it? She doesn't know their language, can't speak the language, and she's not able to make any kind of social connection with anybody. So that's the situation that we've got. Bernstein's prose is luxurious and poetic and characterised by long, dependent clauses. And one review in the Federal remarks that she's more enamoured with words than meaning. Now, for me, that's a strength, a virtue, not a criticism. Study for Obedience doesn't follow a conventional plot structure. Instead, it builds tension through mood and the passive yet potent presence of its narrator. Of course, some good alliteration there, I feel. Rather than clarity, Bernstein invites interpretation and leaves the reader with a sense of unease and moral ambiguity. And to me, that's the beauty of the novel. The narrator is definitely unreliable, and the reader is left to infer her motivations at times. Why is she doing this? And there are clearly episodes and events that the narrator's chosen to omit. I think probably the best thing I can do is read a few extracts from the book to give you some idea of the tone of the prose. So here we go. I attended to their every desire, smoothed away by the slightest discomfort with perfect obedience, with the highest degree of devotion, providing my siblings with the greatest possible succour, demands to which I acceded with alacrity and discreet haste, which is obviously the narrator talking about her childhood days. What needs explaining was that, and it was a funny thing, a very funny thing, I didn't speak the language. I'd been enrolled in a program of daily language tuition. Tuition I continued remotely. For whatever reason, it would not stick. In the morning of those first few weeks at my brother's house, I cherished the silence. I stood at my bedroom window and watched the greens emerge, the trees, the mountains. How to describe how I felt then? Pacing the floorboards in my bare feet, unable to tear my eyes away from the world outside, unable to leave the porch and finding it impossible to stay still. There's very much a sense in that paragraph, that extract of an introverted suffering a mental problem that she's attracted by the outside, but finding it really difficult to leave the house that she's in. I saw the grass grow. I saw it growing. I saw the green changing, noticed the new heights reached by the branches. I paid such close attention. So she's very focused on details of the outside world, the trees that are close by. She can see how far their branches are growing because she's going back and looking at the same thing day after day after day. And yeah, it's not a healthy thing to be doing, is it? Anyway, here's a little passage. It's refers to one of her visits to the village. At the local cafe, after much awkward pointing and waving, she is served dessert by a waiter so scared that he drops the plate and knocks over the salt. She tosses a pinch of it over her shoulder. An old habit learned at the Sabbath table. Nearby, a young woman muffles a scream. And yeah, we definitely get that really uneasy churning of this quite surreal sort of happening. It's not right, is it? What's just happened? It was the year the sow eradicated her piglets. One of the local dogs was having a phantom pregnancy. It was springtime when I arrived, an east wind blowing, an uncanny wind as it turned out. Certain things began to arise. Things go wrong in the village. At the time she turns up. In taking her side, I thought uneasily, Perhaps I ought to take the long view, the survival of the species as a whole. That was my problem. I was always thinking at the level of the individual, in this case, the rabbit, kind of organy wobbling. Now, what was that reminded me of? The hanging, tremulous, a doorway, and a tidy garden. We start to wonder about her mental state of what sort of vision she's seeing herself, and what routes her thoughts are beginning to take in her mind. Here, I thought, as I made my slow way home, my fingers stained by the new, fresh berries, here was what came to the surface after so many throes and convulsions. On the one hand, I felt that my obedience had been rewarded at last. On the other, I feared I was living a life which I had done nothing to earn. I felt sure of some swift and terrible retribution. I think the narrator utilizes ritual to calm herself and to establish a foundation for a new life. And the very attempt at doing that causes her to become ever more isolated and mistrusted. And the reader does fear for her sanity throughout. It feels like she's slowly descending into a very dark place. And the folk horror element of the novel that provides the platform for the presentation of the themes of isolation and alienation. Well, that's, for me, that's a very, very attractive element of the book. Study for Obedience. It's definitely a great read. It's full of tension and dread, and, in my opinion, clearly should have been the Booker Prize winner over the prosaic Prophet Song. And at that point, I think I can say cheerio to this particular video, and bye bye from Booksolve, and happy reading to you all. Cheerio.